Good morning. Hey, my name is Steve Daniel, and we're excited to welcome you to our worship service this morning. We're so glad to have you here with us today, whether you're here in person or you're here virtually, whether you're here for the first time or you've been coming here longer than you can remember. Here at Horizon, we welcome people of all faiths or no faith in particular. Whoever you are in your journey, you're welcome with us. And a couple of brief announcements. Since this is July, most of the children will just go back to their seats after the Time for All Ages story, and we're kind of giving the RE volunteers and staff a bit of a break for the month. So only the OWL class is in session right now. None of the classes will be held. However, we do have that activity center over there for anyone who wants to enjoy that below or above the age of 18. So then we have Horizon Get Out the Vote is presenting a documentary, Suppressed and Sabotaged, The Fight to Vote. That screening will be on Tuesday the 12th, so this Tuesday at 7:30 p.m., both in person in the Fellowship Hall, and then also via Zoom streaming. And the Horizon players are looking for a few good ghosts for the summer dessert theater, which is coming up on April 26th and 27th. So if you're interested, please see Beth Blake Hedges. Is she here today? No? Or Pam Schumann, whom I know is here, after service for details. And then we've got, one further announcement that I wanted to find. Oh, yes, and finally, this week is the Share the Plate, and for July, it's MetroCrest Services. We'll be hearing from the COO, Nicole Binkley, here shortly. And she'll be here to share details on their decision to honor our Lucy Lockwood in a special way in the new building. The foundation is being poor, and funds are still being needed to complete the construction. So please be generous with your July Share the Plate contribution and come join us on second Sunday for coffee hour when Nicole will show us the renderings of the new construction. So she'll be up here to talk a little bit more about that prior to the offertory. So I'm going to turn things over to Daniel Polk. He is the CEO of North Texas Unitarian Universalist Congregations, and he'll be doing our call to worship.
Come out of the dark earth, here where the minerals glow in their stone cells deeper than seed or birth. Come into the pure air above all the heaviness of storm and cloud to this light-possessed atmosphere. Come into, out of, under the earth, the wave, the air. Love touches everywhere with primeval candor. May Sarton. We light our chalice today, words from Hemmerchold. Each morning we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and give back. The affirmation. Please join in the affirmation. Love is the doctrine of our church. To us the truth is its gospel, and service is its prayer.
To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth. Thus do we covenant together.
And we're doing the opening hymn.
Our first hymn today is Around. Rusty and Eileen are going to do this, and I thought it would be fun if we had the men and the women. We're going to sing the whole thing through twice, and then the men will lead off, and then the women will sing there. And number 389. And we're going to play with the volume a bit. When we sing, the first line is your regular volume, gathered here in the mystery of the hour. The second line, let's really sing that out loud. And then the third line, sing quietly. The fourth line, come back to regular volume. gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body,
Gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour,
gathered here in one strong body,
gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near.
gathered here in the mystery of the hour,
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and power, Spirit, draw near.
It's time for all ages.
Any younger people want to come up and join us here? Okay. This is time when I get to come sit down. Hey, do any of you know the story of David and Goliath? What did he do with? So you know the story of the stones. Goliath was this big giant, and David wanted to defend his people. And he defeated this giant, but he's this little guy. He had a slingshot, and he had 5 stones. He used those stones to defeat the giant and save his people. Now, we think of heroes. Aren't heroes normally big and strong and fast? But David was a little guy. But he was clever and smart and brave. He used his slingshot and the 5 stones. Now, we use those 5 stones today. We're talking about something different, about our UU ideas and our principles, which, yeah, I'm going to use some fancy words here. There was a guy named James Luther Adams who said, we can use those stones to talk about our Unitarian Universalist principles. And things like, addressing ignorance or individualism, not caring about anybody else, being selfish, being apathetic, not caring about anything, and just being cynical or just, yeah. And he said, no, we can address that. But we'll put this into some easier words. 1, we're always learning. 2, we are together. That's what counts. We're being together. 3, how we are together matters. 4, we do good because we want to do good, to be good, and to feel good. And 5, we hope. We can always hope. So we're going to use stones today. Later on, there will be stones coming around in a bowl. You can take 5 stones if you want and keep those as your little something to carry around, and you can remember those 5 things. Now, you might have some other stones. These are pretty, just plain stones. But you're welcome to take them when the bowl comes around. Okay? Now, normally we're not going to sing you back to your rooms, so we'll just let you head back to your room, or if you go back to the play area, wherever that is. And thank you for joining me today.
Okay, so once again, I'd like to welcome Nicole Binkley. She's the Chief Operating Officer for MetroCrest. And we'll now come to the time in our service where we honor the generosity of this congregation and share our gifts with one another. So I'll have you.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me come speak this morning. It's nice to see familiar faces, and I really just feel at home here. So, MetroCrest Services, our mission is to provide services and programs that lead to self-sufficiency and independence. But really what that means is that we are showing love and giving hope to those that are in need in our community. Unfortunately, because of the need in our area, we're really out of space at our current facility. Even before COVID, we were out of space. And so now, because of COVID, the need has gone up by 4 or 5%, 4 to 5 times, sorry. And so now we're really out of space. So what that means for us is we started talking about doing a capital campaign and talking about where we would move. God really does play a part in real estate. A piece of land came up on Josie and Beltline, which really is at the heart of our need. And so we really kind of took a leap of faith and said, we've never done a capital campaign before, but we know that this community can rally behind us and do this. So we purchased 4.6 acres on Josie and Beltline. We launched a 15.8 capital campaign to be able to build this building. We have some great renderings that I have outside. If you go to our website, you can look at the beautiful pictures of this facility. We actually just broke ground, so we're hoping in a year from now to be moved in. But really what that means for our community is we're able to give expanded services. This new facility will have expanded workforce offices. It'll have a computer lab, so people in our community can look for jobs. They can use our internet. They can use our facility as a place to do all the things that they don't have access to. It will have a on-site warehouse. If anybody has volunteered at our warehouse, there's no AC, which is miserable. But we have to do it because we use donated space. And so this new facility will have an on-site warehouse. It'll have a volunteer center. So if you volunteered at our holiday program before, we're actually going to be able to get to do that at our own facility. So just really exciting to be able to do all of the things that have been disjointed into one location. I think the most exciting thing is that we'll be reopening our Client Choice Food Pantry. Because of COVID, we have went from serving 30 families a day to now on average 150 families a day, and we're never going to be able to go back inside at the facility we have. So this new facility will allow us to create a beautiful space for our clients to be able to come and shop and go back to having dignity and respect in their pantry choices. And I think one of the things that we're most excited about is to be able to have that greeting area be the Lucy Lockwood greeting area. I think that I started 12 years ago at MetroCrest, and Lucy was a regular volunteer. And I absolutely loved that every day she walked in with a huge smile, and she greeted every person with a huge smile. And even if it was the first time you met her, she was going to treat you like she was your best friend. And so we really thought that that was a way to really honor and just celebrate the amazing legacy that she's left here in our community. And just what a better way to say to every person that walks into our food pantry, you are welcome here. We love you. Here's Lucy's spirit to be able to show you that how much we love you as a community. So we're really excited to be able to do that for Lucy. And just honor her in that way. Along with, she got our Legacy Award at our event last fall for volunteering for so many years. But I'd love to talk to you more about our facility. I think in the coffee hour, I can answer any questions you have, ask all the questions you have, but I'd love to be able to talk to you afterwards. But thank you again for letting me come talk to y'all this morning, for being here with y'all, and for letting me kind of give the announcement about Lucy.
Thank you, Nicole. The offering will now be received. Love is the doctrine of this church and leads us to walk with one another through our joys and sorrows, especially in the ways these things tend to arrive all at once in one tangled blessing we call life. So this morning we hold in our hearts John Purdy, and he has just come out of double lung transplant this week, so please send healing thoughts. Then we also share in celebration. We have a couple of these. First, from Tina, Lucy Lockwood has been released from rehab and is at home with her daughter Marion in Shenandoah, Texas. So that's good news. Then from Rusty, thankful for the electrical repairman who replaced their blown transformer after midnight. And then finally, Rusty and Sarah Nadel are celebrating their 23rd wedding anniversary today. So congratulations. So beyond these, we have named aloud, let us honor joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, yet live in the silence of our hearts. The stories of heartache or hope, beauty and loss. For the grief we carry, may we find healing and hope. For the many blessings of our lives, the beauty we create and receive every day, may our hearts be overcome with gratitude. And as I light this candle, please feel the ways we are all connected to each other and to all beings, knowing what affects one affects us all.
As we pause for a moment of meditation and prayer, mystery, God of many names, and mystery beyond all our naming, we pause to celebrate, to grieve, to remember, and to think about those who are casting about. We have found our home here, but others may be looking. The phrase, many are looking without a chart and compass, making shipwrecks of their emotional lives. We hope that they will find harbor and safety. As we enter now into the spirit of silence, we pray the prayers in our hearts. In the words of Daddy Bob Rabel, we ask this in the names of all those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten. We ask in the names of all the helpers of humanity. Our first reading today is from a sermon by Carrie Gottfried. She's a member of our fellow congregation in Corvallis, Oregon. The 5 Jagged Rocks of Unitarian Universalism. As Unitarian Universalists, we rely heavily on the teachings of our parent traditions, Judaism and Christianity, interpreting their stories through an open-minded perspective, seeking universal meaning in these ancient texts. In the centuries in which our faith has expanded outside the boundaries of traditional Judeo-Christianity, we've expanded what we draw our inspiration from. Universalism is now interpreted to mean that we draw universal meaning from all religious traditions. They teach us to believe in the teachings of Jesus or Buddha. To believe in human potential or power beyond a single will, but life embraces multiple truths, speaking of both and, or both and of and. We draw many of our rituals from paganism, focusing on how to embody our faith, to live fully as our best selves, and to respect Earth and her people. Buddhism teaches us to be mindful, disciplined, and present in the moment, focusing on our actions and intentions to make the world better. Feminist and liberation theologies from various religious traditions remind us that we are a prophetic faith, that we are not complacent in the face of change, but rather pushing forward in our challenge beyond our comfort, to challenge the status quo and our role in oppression. What about Unitarian Universalism? What did we believe? A connection that we miss a lot of the time when we draw from other religions is how these truths connect to our truths. Our hymn today is, I believe, a new one, number 100, number 92.
Number 92, Mysterious Presence, Force of All, the Source of All in your gray hymnals.
Thank you. Another excerpt from 5 Jagged Rocks. The 5 Jagged Rocks are an adaptation of James Luther Adams' Smooth Stones. It's created by Reverends Nancy Bowen and Mike Moran. They build on the 7 principles, but focus even more on a declaration of our faith and theology. These stones are jagged because we aren't perfect, theologically or otherwise. We're rough around the edges, but that does not make us less valid. The first is the belief that there is unity that makes us one. Simply put, everything is connected. Some might call that the connection God or spirit of life or mystery of the universe. The second jagged rock, all souls are worthy and sacred. Reflective of our first principle, this affirms the inherent worth and dignity of every person, but focuses more on something greater than simple, intrinsic, eternal goodness. When we proclaim that people are sacred just for being alive, we are living into our theology as Unitarian Universalists. The third jagged rock, courageous love transform the world, is deeper and wider than just love. How do we create beloved community? With love, with courageous love. Think about the songs, even in pop culture, that have the word love. The fourth stone is that truth continues to be revealed. What we believe as a faith community has changed and will continue to change. The principles, our UU principles, were adopted in 1960, but the seventh, the independent web, was only adopted in 1985, in our lifetimes. That is true for what we know of ourselves and the world, so why should that not be true about our faith tradition? The fifth comes from our Universalist root and might be the most radical jagged rock of them all. Salvation in this life. Salvation in this life. While most other faiths believe in an afterlife, as Unitarian Universalists, we understand that no one belief is guaranteed to be true. Each can still have their own truth, but what's more important to us than what happens after we die is how we live. Today we get a hands-on activity. The ushers will be bringing around bowls of pebbles. I ask you to take 5. And there are no slingshots. We don't use them to throw these at anybody. These stones represent truth and power for good and are small for the angel hands, but those are the only qualities they have in common with Goliath's weapons. And you'll notice they're simple pebbles. If you want polished ones, if you want gemstones or semi-precious, you go find your own. If you're someone who wants to know the meaning for each, before you choose your stones, I'll give you a word for each. I'll go over them later. These words are truth, relationship, justice, responsibility, and hope. Do we have the slides? We do. Okay. These are the 5 words. As you choose your stones, I'll give some background on the person behind this concept. It wasn't entirely original, but he's the one who developed this, put it all together. James Luther Adams started developing this treaty some 8 decades ago. But first about him, he was born in eastern Washington. The town was called Ritzville. I'm sure you've been there, right? He grew up in a fundamentalist home. His father was an itinerant Baptist preacher who then became Plymouth Brethren. Conservative would be an understatement. Adams called his bringing premillenarian, say that 3 times fast, premillenarian fundamentalism. And when he went off to college, he rebounded, went the other direction, and named his education process as deprovincialization. Atheist humanism was his way for a while, and listening to his sermons of John Dietrich, the leading humanist, helped him to find a new home in the Unitarian Church. One of his professors, Frank Rehrig, told him that his problem was that he'd never heard of a self-critical religion, of which ours is, self-critical. Rehrig later told him that you're going to be a minister. Adams hadn't really thought about that and didn't really care for that idea at the time. But after graduation, this raving humanist went off to Harvard Divinity School, where he actually found the curriculum a bit stale. Having witnessed ungrounded mysticism, he was also not satisfied with modernism based merely on spirit of the age. Adams would settle for nothing less than a faith which could be held intellectually accountable. intellectually accountable. His first church was in Salem, Massachusetts, where he served for 7 years. During his tenure there was a strike at the local textile mill, which after 7 weeks had not received coverage in the newspapers. He investigated the working conditions, and he used his pulpit to call for public dialogue. Now, this was a small town. In the pews were workers at the mill and owners of the mill, both in the pews. None objected to Adams' sermon, and the strike was soon settled. This illustrates the need for a free pulpit, where the minister preaches on whatever he or she feels called to. James Ford is a blogger on Pathos and wrote, "His Salem experience strengthens Adams' already firm conviction that a liberal church can and should make itself a faithful voice for the voiceless oppressed." He was sharply critical of the prevailing liberalism, which, because of its excessive individualism, barely noticed and never decisively addressed issues of social justice. A weak liberal religion bestows a spurious blessing on the status quo. The point never ceased to be a major theme for his classes when he taught. After Salem, Adams served the church in Wellesley Hills for a year before he was called to the faculty of what is now Meadville Lombard Seminary in Chicago. But he had one condition, that he first could spend a year studying with theologians in Germany. He spent time in 1935 and early 36 with people like Martin Niemöller, Albert Schweitzer, and members of the underground church. He also met with the Gestapo. And after a few meetings and merely being imprisoned himself, he decided that he might want to leave earlier than his planned departure. He was dismayed, disappointed to see that liberal religion did not have an answer to Nazism. Why he developed the 5 smooth stones. Could we use that today? Can we use that today? So let's look at these 5 points. Please remember, they are not specific to any theology, any doctrine. They are not exclusively Unitarian Universalist, Christian, Jewish, or any other faith group. You also don't have to take notes. There's a handout after the service, and I might even make these slides available. The first stone is truth. Religious liberalism depends on the principle that revelation is continuous. Nobody has a lock on truth or monopoly, and we will always be finding new truths, new facts, and insights. We have no book that is infallible or absolute. Also, belief cannot be dictated to young generations, but must be uncovered, discovered again and again. Truth is always, ever unfolding, coming out. There's a hymn in a line of one of our hymns, number 189, I believe. Revelation is not sealed. Revelation is not sealed. It's also why the hymn book is called Singing the Living Tradition, because ours is a living tradition as our understanding of truth and faith continues to grow. This principle also challenges us because we cannot rely just on what has been, but must find the best answers for our current and our upcoming situations. Once, one of our leaders was asked, "Where do the Universalists stand on whatever issue?" And he answered, "We don't stand, we move." The second stone, relationship. All relations between persons ought to ideally rest on mutual, free consent and not on coercion. This says we must freely enter into relationship. This applies to faith, to love, loyalty and trust, never coerced, always mutual. Forcing any of those would not make them lasting or true. The third stone, justice. His words are that religious liberalism affirms the moral obligation to direct one's effort towards the establishment of a just and loving community. It is this which makes the role of the prophet central and indispensable to liberalism. I'll simplify that. We're called to serve our neighbors, and sometimes that community takes priority over the individual. Serving our neighbors like MetroCrest. A moral obligation to build a just and loving community. Being a prophet is never easy, but can be rewarding or meaningful. Can you think which of our principles don't apply? The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Acceptance of one another. Encouragement to spiritual growth in congregations. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Right of conscience and use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Justice. The fourth stone, responsibility, or we could use the word agency. We deny the immaculate conception of virtue and affirm the necessity of social incarnation. We deny the immaculate conception of virtue and affirm the necessity of social incarnation. Would you like this in plain English? Good things don't happen by themselves. It is people who perform acts of kindness and make the world a better place. It's up to us. We are the ones who must create good. It's up to us. The fifth stone, liberalism, holds that the resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. Again, he liked words. Let's simplify that. We have what we need somewhere. We have what we need. And there is reason to hope. We have hope. Now, how can we apply that to our own daily living? And who among us would not like some more hope in our lives? So what if we use this premise to address our choices and our life circumstances? Sometimes we answer questions with, there's not enough space, we don't have enough people, that would take too much time, we don't have that space on the schedule, we don't have enough money, blah, 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 blah. What instead if we answered, how could we make the space available? How could we share the work and make it easier for everyone? What if we involved others and shared the workload? How could we find the time? How can we make room on the schedule? Where could we find the money? I hope these words can be of use to you, not just in this congregation, but in your daily lives. Would you like to say these 5 words with me to remember them? Truth, relationship, justice, responsibility, hope. I'll close with a quote from Adams. An unexamined faith is not worth having, for it can only be true by accident. Let us be purposeful with our faith. Our closing hymn today is, the tune is the national song of Finland, and it actually was the Finnish answer to Nazism. Number 319.
We would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a cooler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which guides our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
We say together. The mission of this congregation is to welcome radically, love boldly, grow spiritually, and serve courageously. We envision a community filled with justice.
All to thrive in a just
Justice.
world.
If here you have found love, take it with you into the world. Or if you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may be true. And if you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace.